No! Please don't die here. The cry cut through the thick afternoon air like glass shattering. Cars roared past. Horns blared. Dust rose in waves off the hot Lagos road. But no one stopped. No one even looked. A young man knelt beside a figure slumped by the gutter. A woman motionless, wrapped in what looked like torn fabric. Her chest rose once, barely. Then stillness. "Ma, can you hear me?" he asked again, voice trembling. "Please don't close your eyes." People kept walking. Vendors shouted prices. The city moved on. But he stayed. He stayed. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, felt the faintest flutter of life. His heart kicked. "You're alive. You're still here." He looked around, nothing but passing cars, indifference, and heat so sharp it burned his throat. His shirt clung to his skin, stained from work, soaked in sweat and grease. Still, he slid his arms under her, lifting her fragile frame as though she weighed nothing at all. "Hold on, Mama. Please. Hold on for me." Her head fell against his shoulder. Her lips parted. A whisper of air, water. He turned toward the roadside kiosk. "Please. A bottle of water, a beg, please." He caught himself. Not everyone would understand that word. "Water. Please." A vendor hesitated, then tossed him a small bottle. Elior unscrewed it with shaking hands, poured a few drops into her mouth. She coughed weakly, and that tiny sound felt like thunder in his chest. He smiled through tears. "That's it. Stay with me." Behind them, engines idled in traffic. One of those engines purred softer than the rest, the low growl of power under control. A black Bentley. Its tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a dark suit, calm, composed, but with eyes that saw everything. Chief Benedict Okanji watched the boy in silence. Watched the crowd ignore. Watched the young man kneeling in the dust, whispering to a dying stranger as though she were his own blood. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he opened his door. "Hey, young man." Elior froze. The woman's head was still against his arm. He looked up. "Bring her," the man said. His voice was deep, controlled. "We're going to the hospital." Elior blinked. A stranger, a billionaire, he could tell from the car alone, offering help. "Sir, I don't even know. Do you want her to die?" "No, sir." "Then stop talking and bring her." He didn't argue. He just moved. "Hello, family. If you believe kindness still matters, please take a second and like the video. That simple act keeps these moments alive, and together, we prove that compassion still wins. And let us know in the comments, where are you listening from today? The Bentley's air conditioning hit Elior's face like a rush of mercy. He laid the woman gently on the seat, holding her hand even as the car sped through the Lagos chaos. His heart wouldn't stop racing. Benedict glanced at him. "What's your name?" "Elior, sir. Elior Daramola." "You always pick dying women off the street, Elia?" He managed a nervous smile. "Just couldn't leave her there, sir." Benedict looked forward again. "Good." For a while, they rode in silence. The city blurred by, glass towers, yellow buses, shouting hawkers, the pulse of a city that never stopped breathing. Elior looked at the woman beside him. Her hand was wrinkled, cold, her breathing shallow but steady now. He kept whispering, "You're safe. You're safe." Benedict's driver weaved through traffic, tires hissing on the hot pavement. Finally, the hospital came into view. White walls, tall gates, the glowing blue letters of Mercy General. "Go," Benedict said. "Carry her in." Elior rushed through the doors, shouting for help. Nurses came running, wheeling a stretcher. The woman disappeared through swinging glass doors. Elior stood frozen, chest heaving, hands shaking. He felt a hand on his shoulder. "Benedict, you did good," the older man said quietly. "You did what most people wouldn't." Elior nodded, but his voice cracked when he spoke. "I couldn't walk away, sir. I just couldn't." The billionaire studied him for a long moment. There was something in his gaze, not pity, not curiosity, but a strange recognition. As if, for the first time in years, he was reminded of the man he used to be. Outside, the afternoon sun began to sink, painting the city gold. Inside, 2 lives had already begun to change. Benedict turned toward the corridor, his tone final, yet oddly gentle. "You come with me," he said. "We're going to see what happens next." And that was how it began. A choice made in dust, a kindness witnessed by power, and a story that would shake every life it touched. "Benedict, that's my mother. That's my mother, Moreo." The scream echoed through the marble hallway of Mercy General Hospital, like thunder breaking a clear sky. Every head turned. Nurses froze. The billionaire's calm face broke for the first time. Liana Okanji, elegant, poised, the woman half of Lagos called Madame Steele, was trembling. Her eyes locked on the frail figure lying behind the glass. Tubes ran from the woman's arms, machines blinked beside her bed. And there she was, her mother, the one she'd buried in her heart 2 years ago. For a moment, the whole world stopped breathing. Benedict's hand found hers. "Liana, are you sure?" Her lips quivered. "I'd know that face anywhere." Elier, standing a few steps away, couldn't move. He felt like an intruder in someone else's miracle. The nurses whispered. The doctors stared. No one knew what to say. Hours passed before the chaos settled. The doctors came out, wiping sweat from their foreheads. "She's stable," one of them said. "Whoever brought her in saved her life." All eyes turned to Elier. He shifted awkwardly. "I didn't do much, sir." The doctor smiled. "You did everything." From inside the room came a raspy voice. "Where's the boy who carried me?" Elier froze. That voice, soft, ancient, grateful. The nurse waved him in. As he stepped closer, the woman's frail hand lifted, trembling, searching the air. He took it gently. You gave me a second life," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "You gave me a reason to stop, Mama. That's what my father used to say, help people when it counts." Her lips trembled into a smile. "Then your father raised a good man." Behind them, Liana pressed her hands to her mouth, tears spilling freely. Benedict stood silent, but his eyes, those calm, unreadable eyes, softened. That evening, as the sun faded outside the hospital, the three of them sat in the waiting lounge. The world beyond the window was noisy, impatient. But in here, time seemed to slow down. Benedict finally spoke. "What do you do, Elliot?" "I work in a factory, sir. Metal parts. Mostly nights." "And your dream?" Elier hesitated, almost embarrassed. "To fly, sir. I've wanted to be a pilot since I was a boy." Benedict leaned forward. "But why didn't you pursue it?" He chuckled dryly. "Dreams are expensive, sir. Factories pay faster." For a moment, silence. Then Benedict nodded slowly, as though confirming something he already knew. He looked at Liana. She looked back, tears still clinging to her lashes. "From today," Benedict said, "you're not alone. I'll make sure you fly." Elier's lips parted, but no sound came. He was too stunned to speak. "You mean?" "I mean," Benedict said simply, "sometimes heaven pays attention when you stop for a stranger." Elier looked from Benedict to Liana to Moreo sleeping peacefully behind the glass, and his chest ached in a way he couldn't name. Gratitude, relief, disbelief. He knelt on the cold hospital floor and covered his face with both hands. "Thank you, sir." "I don't know how to." "Don't thank me," Benedict said. "Thank the heart that made you stop." But not every heart in the building felt joy that night. From the corridor's shadow, a man in a dark suit watched them. His expression calm, but his jaw tight. Darius Adeshina, Benedict's longtime business partner. A man who smiled with his lips but never with his eyes. He watched the boy, the factory worker the Okanjis were now embracing, and something ugly twisted in his chest. He had spent 20 years by Benedict's side, building empires, signing deals. And now, this boy had done nothing but lift a stranger, and somehow captured the family's heart. Darius turned away, his voice a whisper only the night could hear. "We'll see how long your miracle lasts." And just like that, the story of gratitude was already turning into a story of jealousy. One heart saved a life. Another, darkened with envy. What none of them knew was that their fates had already tied together, by kindness, by blood, and by betrayal yet to come. If you're still with us at this point, thank you truly. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to invite you to join our storytelling family. Every follow helps us keep telling stories that remind the world, goodness still wins, even when evil plots in silence. Let us know in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? No! Pull up, Elier. The radio screamed in his headset, but the controls wouldn't move. The plane shook violently, alarms blaring, the horizon spinning into chaos. Smoke curled from the dashboard. A single, terrible thought hit him. This isn't a malfunction. The world tilted. Then darkness. The sound of beeping machines replaced the sound of the engine. When Elier opened his eyes, the room was white. His right arm was bandaged. His ribs ached with every breath. For a long moment, he didn't know where he was. Then the memory came flooding back, the flight, the fire, the fall. He turned his head. Through the glass, he saw faces he'd come to love, Benedict, Liana, and old Moreo, her hands clasped in prayer. They had flown to Zaria overnight the moment they heard. Liana rushed to his bedside. "My son, you're awake." He tried to smile. Guess I made an unscheduled landing. She laughed through tears. Don't joke like that again. Benedict stood silent, his expression unreadable. The report says it was an accident. Mechanical failure. Elior shook his head weakly. No, sir. It wasn't. The room fell quiet. What do you mean? Benedict asked. Elior's voice trembled. Before the flight, I saw someone near the simulator room. A man adjusting the control settings. I thought he was maintenance. But when I got closer, he swallowed hard. I saw him. It was Darius Adeshina. Liana gasped. Benedict froze. The same man who had toasted with them at dinner. The man who'd called Elior's son with a smirk. The man who had been by Benedict's side for 2 decades. Benedict's hands clenched into fists. His voice dropped to a whisper. Are you certain? Yes, sir. I saw his ring. The same gold ring he always wears. Benedict turned away, his mind racing. For years, Darius had been his partner, his brother in business. They'd built everything together. But jealousy could turn even brothers into enemies. He whispered, almost to himself. So that's how deep your greed goes. Liana pressed her hands to her mouth. He tried to kill our son. Elior's eyes fluttered open again. He looked at them, guilt clouding his voice. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to bring this pain to your family. Benedict placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Don't you ever apologize for surviving. You hear me? Never. Moreo moved closer, her old hands trembling as she brushed Elior's hair from his forehead. My son, she said softly, you fly with God's wings. Even when they break, he still carries you. Her words struck something deep inside him. The way she said my son, not just out of affection, but something else. Something older, buried. He looked at her, and for the first time noticed how her eyes mirrored his own. The same soft brown, the same way they glimmered when she smiled. That night, when everyone else had left to rest, Moreo stayed by his bedside. She held his hand, silent for a long time. Then she whispered, almost afraid of her own voice. Those eyes, I've seen them before. Elior frowned. Ma. She looked away, tears forming. That smile, that dimple. God, no, it can't be. He tried to sit up, pain shooting through his ribs. You're scaring me, Mama. Her breathing hitched. Before Liana was born, she said slowly, I had another child. A boy. He was taken from me when he was barely a year old. My cousin's husband kidnapped him and disappeared. I searched for years, then I gave up. Her voice cracked. I thought God took him from me. But when I saw you, Elior, my heart remembered. The silence that followed was heavy. Elior couldn't speak. He could only stare, tears welling, disbelief fighting with hope. He finally whispered, You're saying I'm your son? Moreo nodded, sobbing. I feel it in my soul. Outside, the night wind rattled the hospital windows. Somewhere in the city, Darius poured himself a glass of brandy and smiled at the news that Elior had survived. He had no idea what truth was about to rise from the ashes of his deceit. Because when morning came, everything would change. Stop lying. Moreo's voice cracked through the hospital corridor like lightning. Darius Adeshina flinched but quickly masked it with a cold smirk. You're confused, old woman. The boy is mine. I raised him. Ask him yourself. Elior stood frozen, watching the man who had just been dragged in by police. Darius looked rough now, tie hanging loose, sweat darkening his collar, his arrogance fraying around the edges. Tell them, Elior, Darius sneered. You worked in my shop. You were my apprentice. My son. Moreo's frail body trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. You stole him, she whispered. You took my baby that night. The night I left him with my cousin Ada, your wife. Darius's smirk faded. His jaw tightened. You have no proof. Then let God decide, she said, her voice steady now. Let the blood speak. Benedict stepped forward, his tone low but commanding. I've already ordered a DNA test. You won't escape this with lies. 3 days later, the hospital waiting room was silent. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Moreo sat beside Elior, clutching her rosary so tightly her knuckles were white. Liana stood behind them, one hand on her mother's shoulder. Benedict entered with a white envelope in his hand. The air shifted. The results are back. No one spoke. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to pause. He opened the envelope, drew in a breath, and read aloud. Elior Daramola and Moreo Okanji, 99.9% genetic match. Biological relationship confirmed. Moreo's hand flew to her mouth. The rosary slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. She turned toward Elior, tears already streaming down her cheeks. My son, she whispered. God brought you back to me. Elior could barely breathe. His whole life, every loss, every empty night, suddenly made sense. He fell to his knees, holding her hands, sobbing like the child she'd once lost. Mama, I never thought I had a family. She cupped his face, smiling through tears. Now you know why God made you stop that day. You didn't just save me, you came home. Liana cried openly now. She wrapped her arms around both of them. Brother, she whispered, the words strange and beautiful in her mouth. Benedict turned away for a moment, clearing his throat, blinking back emotion. Looks like heaven has its own way of keeping promises. But not everyone was weeping with joy. The officers led Darius into the room, his hands cuffed. His face twisted in disbelief as the truth sank in. This isn't possible, he muttered. He was mine. He worked for me. You raised him on lies, Benedict said quietly. You raised another man's son, and tried to kill him when he became better than you. Darius lunged forward, shouting, You'll regret this. All of you will regret this. The officers restrained him. Benedict's voice remained calm, sharp as glass. No, Darius. You'll regret losing your soul. Thunder rumbled outside, shaking the windows. The officers dragged him out, his curses echoing down the hall until the sound faded. That night, the Okanji mansion glowed like a lighthouse against the storm. Family and friends filled the living room, smiles, tears, disbelief. Moreo sat proudly in her armchair, Elior beside her, still dazed but full of peace. Benedict raised a glass. To the boy who reminded us what kindness looks like. To the son we didn't know we had. Everyone cheered softly. Elior laughed, shaking his head. To the family I never knew I was saving. Moreo smiled. Kindness always finds its way home. Outside, lightning flashed once more, but the thunder that followed felt softer, almost distant. Inside, the family, broken for decades, was whole again. And in a quiet corner of the house, Elior looked out the window and whispered to the night, Papa, your words were true. A strong heart really is better than a full pocket. He closed his eyes, letting the rain's rhythm fill the silence. What he didn't know yet was that this wasn't the end. The real miracle was still to come. The life, the love, and the legacy that awaited him. Captain Elior Daramola, you are clear for takeoff. The voice from the control tower crackled through his headset, calm and steady. Elior smiled, fingers tightening on the throttle. The compass on his dashboard glinted in the morning sun. The same compass his late father once carried, now polished, restored, and reborn. He took a slow breath. This is for you, Papa, he whispered. The engines roared. The plane surged forward, wheels lifting from the runway. Lagos stretched out below, vast, alive, golden in the early light. He looked down at the city that once broke him, and then blessed him. There, near the winding road by the market, that was where he had once stopped for a dying woman. That's where heaven started working, he murmured. It had been a year since Darius Adeshina's arrest. His empire had fallen, his name buried under the weight of his own deceit. But in the Okanji family, healing bloomed like sunlight after a long rain. Benedict kept his promise. He sponsored Elior's full aviation training, every last flight hour, every exam, every uniform. Moreo recovered her strength, her joy, her laughter. She never stopped thanking God for returning her son. And Liana, once the daughter without a mother, now found herself both sister and daughter again. Their home, once filled with silence and sorrow, became a house of laughter. Through it all, one constant remained, Zara Nwosu. She'd been there since the crash. The young nurse who sat by Elior's bedside, praying under her breath when the doctors had left. When he woke in pain, she smiled first. When he wanted to give up, she whispered, You were meant to fly. Elior once asked her, Why do you care so much? She had smiled shyly. Because I saw how you looked at life before the crash, like you owed it something. And I want to see you look at it like it owes you joy. From that moment, she became his light. The day of his graduation came like sunrise after a long night. The auditorium roared with applause as he stepped up to the podium in his crisp white uniform, gold wings gleaming on his chest. In the crowd sat Benedict, Liana, Moreo, and Zara, faces full of pride and tears. He raised the silver compass high. This, he said softly, once belonged to my father. It guided him through storms. And today it guided me home. He looked toward Moreo. To my mother, who found me twice. To Benedict and Liana. To the family who showed me that love isn't only born, sometimes it's chosen. And then to Zara. And to the woman who taught me that broken wings still fly. The audience rose to their feet, clapping through tears. Even the instructors wiped their eyes. Months later, The Okanji estate sparkled under strings of gold and white. A wedding. Zara walked down the aisle in a gown that shimmered like morning light. The air smelled of roses and rain. Moreo led her gently, her eyes wet but radiant. At the altar stood Elier, tall and calm, his pilot's wings pinned proudly to his suit. As Zara reached him, Moreo pressed something into his palm, the compass. She whispered, "Never forget, my son, kindness always finds its way home." Elier smiled through tears. "You taught me that, Mama." They exchanged vows beneath chandeliers that scattered light like 1,000 stars. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the room erupted in cheers. But Elier's gaze lifted upward, beyond the chandeliers, beyond the ceiling, into the heavens themselves. "Thank you, Father," he whispered, voice trembling, "for letting me fly." Later that night, as laughter echoed across the estate, Elier and Zara slipped away to the balcony. The city shimmered below, a sea of lights stretching into forever. Zara leaned on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day?" He nodded. "Every time I take off. Every time I land." She smiled. "Then promise me something. Anything. Never stop helping people when it counts." He laughed softly, repeating the words his father once spoke. "A strong heart is better than a full pocket." She rested her head on his chest. "Then you'll never run out of wealth." The night breeze brushed past them, carrying the sounds of joy, of music, of family healed by love. And beneath the same stars that once watched a boy kneel beside a dying woman, a man now stood whole, living proof that destiny is always listening.